Okay, I'm live.
I want to see my shirt. Oh, yeah. Oh, why'd you stop it?
It's not stopped. It's just on another screen.
Is anybody in it yet?
Nope.
Does it save to what we do? Is this going to save?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. Can they see us right now?
Mm-mm.
If somebody was in, would they be able to see us?
Mm-mm.
Really?
It looks like that.
Oh. Can they hear us?
Yes.
Oh. Hey. Hi. I want to say hi. Hi. Hi.
Goodness.
Yeah. Carmella, wait.
Good evening, everybody. My nieces think it's so cool that I'm going live. That they wanted to join and say hello to everybody.
Hi. Hi.
This is not Snapchat.
It's Instagram.
No, it's Facebook. But I am taking questions, everybody. I am taking questions. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll answer them. Pleasure to be on with you guys. My pleasure. I'm grateful for your service. And thank you so much for all the birthday love. I turned 35 2 days ago. I can't even remember the date. 2 days ago, and it was fantastic. And I appreciate all the birthday wishes. Okay, you guys are banned from live. So the question is, has the VA closed down? And the answer is no, they have not. VA has the ability to work remotely. And that is exactly what they're doing. I had an attorney fee coordinator call me today from Salt Lake City, and she called me from her house phone. So the VA is not shut down. They are still working. They have the ability to work remotely. If you're 70% PTSD and you feel your condition has worsened, and so does your doctor, therapist, I attended CPA exam, and my decision letter stated the VA evidence holds more persuasion. I don't get it. Well, it's pretty difficult to get to 100% just from PTSD alone. And that's the only other level that you have to go to. And so, did your doctor fill out a DBQ and say your condition was worse, and rate you totally impaired? Did your therapist write that you were totally impaired, totally and permanently? If that's not the case, then the VA probably did find their evidence held more persuasion. If their evidence was more thorough, then what you turn in, they will find that it was more persuasive. But if you feel like you had the evidence, you're saying yes, and you had a Nexus letter. If you feel like you had the evidence and you were lowballed, then you should appeal the decision. Ask for a higher level review, get somebody else to look at it, and ask them exactly what makes the VA's evidence more persuasive than yours. The law says that, of course, that the veteran's supposed to get the benefit of the doubt. And so when evidence is in equios, which means equal, the same amount of positive and negative evidence, that tie is supposed to go to the veteran. Sometimes you have to remind the VA of that. So I would encourage you to not give up on it. If you feel like you should be 100% alone for PTSD, your doctor feels like that, your therapist, it's worth pursuing. It's a high hurdle, though. You should be aware of that. It's worth pursuing. Okay, let's see. I'm missing only 2 check spots on the DBQ to be 100%. Wow. Yeah, you definitely have a bad case of PTSD and probably should be 100%, but unfortunately I can't make that decision. So I would encourage you to keep pursuing it. Don't give up. Fight, fight, fight. What have you heard of methylonic or anti-malarial poisoning? I know a little bit about it, not very much. I know that it's able to be service connected. I know there are some experts who specialize in Nexus letters just for that for those conditions and such conditions with poisoning, and that's certainly who I would contact. It's worth getting an expert in those type of cases to tie it to your condition, to the type of poisoning, and that's about the extent of my knowledge. So yes, the VA is still working. It's not shut down. There are a few levels while we're talking about PTSD of mental health conditions. You can either be 0%, 10%, 30%, 50%, 70%, or 100%. And so I feel like a lot of times veterans get lowballed at the 10% or 30% level because generally PTSD is one of those things that it just seems to take over your life, your mental condition, and it's not hard to be at a 50% or a 70% level. Any more questions? Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope everybody is staying safe from this virus and staying in social distancing as we've been told to do. This is my effort at social distancing. I work from home all the time, so this is nothing new to me, but having an audience definitely gives me some form of social distancing, I guess. What if you have combined PTSD? I'm assuming that you're talking about either combined with a TBI or combined with another mental health condition. And so, okay, you mean MST and combat related. How does that affect your rating? It doesn't necessarily affect your rating. It's about your current rating. It's about the severity, the effect and severity of the PTSD at the current time. So the incident that happened is what led you to have PTSD. How it currently affects your life and functioning is what you're going to be rated on. So that's not necessarily a combined PTSD. It's just PTSD. I did get lowballed back in 2006 when I did my first claim. I gave up, did another claim in 2017 and was awarded 70% and over 50% back, $50,000 back pay. Wow, that's awesome. That's great. I'm assuming they went back a little ways to get that much back pay, but I'm glad that you didn't continue to get lowballed and that you kept fighting and they eventually gave you the right percentage. PTSD can be combat related or not combat related. Both gets rated the same, whether it's personal trauma, MST, or anything like that. It all gets rated the same way. It's about your current severity and your level of functioning on the day of the exam that matters most. Unless you're trying to prove service connection. If you're trying to prove service connection, that's where combat and MST would come in, and you need to describe the incident and the symptoms and things like that, and prove to the VA that it happened in some capacity, or there were markers on your service record. If it's MST, there need to be markers. Well, it's not mandatory, but markers would help a lot. Meaning something on your record like losing weight, a police report, or something like that. I just got one of my clients service connected for PTSD, and all he had from the incident was a police report, and that was enough to verify his stressor, and the psychologist deemed it worthy enough to give him a 70% rating for PTSD. So definitely anything that was reported. If it's not reported, then connect the dots for the VA as best you can in a personal statement. Give them as much detail as you can, and that should go some ways toward getting the rating you deserve. Can sleep apnea be claimed secondary to PTSD with alcoholism? It certainly can, and I see it quite often that it's secondary to PTSD. The alcoholism part really doesn't make a difference, but it would be nice to submit some studies that show that PTSD can be related to sleep apnea with your claim if you're going that route, because there are some doctors that feel that it can be connected and some doctors feel that it can't. And so it's not completely widely accepted that it can be connected. So sometimes you have to draw out connected dots for the CMP examiner and for the writer. But yes, I see it service connected quite frequently. And if you search the BVA database, Board of Veterans Appeals database for that connection, sleep apnea and PTSD, I think you'll find that it gets connected a lot of times too. So if you've been denied something like that, keep fighting. Don't give up on it. Hi, have you heard anything about teleconferencing now that offices are having examiners working from home? Yes. They are investing a lot in telehealth, both on the health side of the VA and the benefit side of the VA. They are allowing CMP examiners to do video conference CMP exams. They're stressing the ACE process, where the veteran doesn't have to be present. The examiner just reviews the record and makes a decision. And I'm not a big fan of that process. I think on all exams, the examiner should talk to the veteran, but that doesn't happen on every exam. And so, yes, there's teleconferencing, telehealth going on, teleconferencing CMP exams. I don't know how they would do any musculoskeletal CMP exams by remotely. That would probably just be a record review. But I know definitely for mental health and things like that, they have the capability to do telehealth. Is there any talk of certain CMPs being conducted via telehealth? It's not, no mass guidance that's been put out. It's really up to the examiner. And what I've been told or read is that examiners have been retrained in how to do examinations by telehealth and by remotely and using the ACE process. So they know what exams they can go ahead and finish and what ones need to wait. When I do a higher level review, can I just use buddy letters and family letters as evidence only? I didn't do any supporting documents. Does it help any? Okay, on a higher level review, you cannot submit any new evidence. The record is closed. If you have more supporting evidence to your claim, then you should probably file another supplemental claim or take it to the board. But in a higher level review, they will only review the evidence that was in the record at the time of the decision. So I hope that makes sense. But it would help on a supplemental claim or a claim to the board where you can add more evidence. I've had a few claims denied prior to the exam. What can I do about that? There should be a reason why they were denied prior to the exam. What exactly did the letter say was the reason for your claim being denied? That will tell you exactly the hurdle you need to overcome. I will tell you that the threshold to order an exam by the VA is very, very low. The BBA holds to that a lot of times. There doesn't have to be much on the record for the VA to trigger the duty to assist and the VA to have to order an exam. So that's something you should definitely fight if it happened. More likely than not, you should have gotten an exam. Do you think I'll have to have a CMP exam for sleep apnea secondary to sinusitis if I've been diagnosed with sleep apnea through the VA? I have my personal statement, 2 Bucholz letters, and Nexus letter. If you have a Nexus letter, the VA doesn't have to do a CMP exam, but they probably will, just to see this current severity of the condition. That's one of those things that can be done on ACE review. They can look at your VA record and see that you have sleep apnea, see that you have a CPAP, see that you have sinusitis, and they might be able to rate you without seeing you. But generally, when I'm trying to make that connection, and I just applied for a client for sleep apnea secondary to sinusitis today, generally that connection requires a CMP exam. I was denied migraines and flat foot aggravated. No CMP due to lack of medical complaints. Anything I can do? Yes, appeal it. If you feel like that is connected to your service, one of the laws that the VA doesn't like, at the agency at least, at the board they're a little better about this, but at the agency that they don't like to implement a lot, or they don't talk a lot about, is that the law says that anything after service that is clearly related to service can be service connected too. And so if something happened after service, or it was triggered by something that happened in service, or a condition that is service connected, then you should pursue that. If you had no complaints in service, or you had flat feet before service and it was aggravated by service, you need to connect the dots for the VA. Write a statement and connect the dots for the rater, for the person examining your claim. How can I have an appeal from 2013 that was remanded, then went back to the judge January 2020, and I also had a higher level review for March 2017. And when I called today, I was told I was sent a statement of the case March 27, 2020, and the issues that's on the higher level review 2017, but the issues on the statement of the case is from 2013 appeal. How is it possible to have two different appeals mixed up? Both of those, if they're for different issues, both of those appeals can be going at the same time. I would strongly encourage you to respond to that statement of the case, either opt in to the new appeals process, or file a Form 9 and keep going with the legacy process. You only have 60 days. So you have 60 days from March 27, 2020 to give the VA a response to that statement of the case. And if you don't, your appeal is going to be closed. And so the most important thing is that you respond, that you file a Form 9, or that you opt into the new appeal system by filling out one of the forms, and it has a little box up there that asks if you want to opt in, and asking for a HLR or a supplemental claim or an appeal to the board that way. But I don't think your appeals are mixed up. It's just that you have two appeals going at the same time, one in the new system and one in the old system. I wouldn't give up on an appeal from 2013, though. How does the IU process work? I'm rated at 80% total, and I have one disability rated at 40%. It's a back injury that is rated at 40%. The IU process is just that you apply for unemployability. The VA is going to send out a statement, a letter, a form to your previous employer and ask them some questions. They're going to bring you in for CMP exams, and you're going to get, the VA considers a claim for IU as a claim for increase. So they're going to examine all your service-connected disabilities and ask the doctor if those disabilities prevent you from engaging in substantially gainful employment. And so a lot of it is up to the examiner. If any one of those disabilities prevents you from engaging in substantially gainful employment, then you should be rated as unemployable. I've heard that the VA won't be accepting DBQs anymore. Is there any truth to that? Not necessarily. What has occurred is that the VA has taken down from its website DBQ forms that the public could use. Those DBQ forms have been archived by a lot of users of this group and other groups that you could probably find a link to. Some of them are still on the VA sites and other places, but the VA cannot reject evidence, valid evidence. So if the doctor were to still fill out a DBQ, that would be valid evidence. And what I've said for myself is that if the VA stops accepting DBQs, they haven't changed the M21 or any official written guidance yet that they won't accept them. But I've said for myself that if they stop accepting their branded DBQs that have all the VA language on them and all that I would just take the VA branding off and give it to the doctor, ask the doctor to fill it out, and turn it into the VA as more evidence. It'd just be a medical assessment at that point, but the DBQ answers all the questions that they want answered. So I would just put that on a different form, ask the doctor to fill it out, and turn it into the VA. They cannot reject valid evidence. Any more questions? I think that taking the DBQs away from veterans on the most used website of the VA for them is a disservice to veterans. I think it's an atrocious decision. I know that it was based on a Office of Inspector General report that said that there was a lot of fraud, or there was some fraud going on with the DBQ process and having them public and having veterans private providers fill them out. I read that report. I don't think that it accounted for how many bad CMP exams are out there. The horrible experiences that veterans go through, the fact that the CMP examiners aren't thorough enough, that they only consider the veteran, what the veteran goes through on the day of the exam most times. They don't rate based on flare-ups. They don't consider how bad flare-ups can be. And generally, CMP examiners are more conservative than when you get a private provider. Private provider will listen to you and write down all your symptoms. And that's why veterans like to go to private providers. And so I still think they should be available and that there was nothing wrong with them. I understand that you can't do like an ankle exam over video or by phone. And so if veterans were doing that, then, that's probably unacceptable. But mental health exams by video conference, I see nothing wrong with that. I think the VA should have just responded by making a rule that you can have mental health exams by video conference. So it was based on an Inspector General report that had a very limited scope, in my opinion. It didn't consider all the issues surrounding DBQs. I need help. My previous rating of 50% for insomnia from 2015, I submitted a new claim of PTSD, and the insomnia claim was changed to PTSD. Is the PTSD still rated at 50%? The issue that you ran into is that PTSD and insomnia are both considered mental health conditions from the VA's perspective. And so you were just essentially submitting a new claim for the VA to look at your mental health condition again. You could have just asked for an increase in the insomnia. But since you submitted for PTSD, they went through the process of verifying the PTSD, and some examiners said your condition must have progressed to PTSD. That's why they changed it from PTSD, from insomnia to PTSD. And in regular circumstances, I don't want to say regular circumstances, in other circumstances, and in some other veterans' cases, they might have just said that you still had insomnia and PTSD and combined them, like PTSD with insomnia, and giving you the 50% rating. So nothing wrong has necessarily occurred in your case unless they want to reduce it. It's just that you essentially put in a claim for 2 mental health conditions, and the VA just took the predominant one, or what your insomnia has progressed to, and gave you a rating for that. Can you obtain aid in attendance while drawing TDIU? I believe that you can, but I can get with you after this programming to answer that question more in depth. I think that you can. My wife separated in February 2018 and received a 90% rating. She just applied for the individual unemployment to get paid at 100%. Will her entire rating be changed to 100%? And also, will the effective date be backdated? Thank you for what you do. Well, first of all, you're welcome. It's my pleasure to help. But if she just applied for unemployability, then if she gets it, she will be considered 100% unemployable. That's a type of 100% by itself. There are different types of 100%. And so her rating she will still be rated at 90%. She will just be considered 90% unemployable and get paid at the 100% rate. Whether the effective date is backdated or not depends on whether she continuously pursued the claim since she was rated in 2018. At any point, did 365 days pass between any two claims? Between the February 2018 claim and the current claim that you just filed for unemployability, did you file another claim? If so, then it should be backdated to February 2018. If not, it's likely going to be the date of claim that you put in for the unemployability. My CMP examiner said that no change to my insomnia rating would change. Any advice? If this is a continuation of the previous question, then the CMP examiner didn't have a good understanding of how the process works. She might have just meant that your rating for mental health would not change. But a lot of times, insomnia is considered a symptom of PTSD. So they're both mental health conditions. You can only be rated for one mental health condition in overwhelming majority of the cases with the VA, unless a provider can distinguish between the symptoms of two conditions. You can only be rated for one mental health condition. So they just rated you for the predominant condition, and nothing, you haven't been slighted at all. There's no issue to argue there. Unless you feel your insomnia is worse than your PTSD. But the VA would probably just tell you you're not a medical professional, and the medical professional has spoken. I was told my increased exams would be done by November. I'm sorry you were told that, but the VA has no specific time frame for guideline that they're held to for finishing a claim. Yes, on eBenefits or VA.gov, they give you a projected time frame, but they're known for going over that time frame or going shorter than that time frame. It just depends on, well, it depends on a number of factors, all of them which I can't name here. But let's say that they had to send out for your service records, or they had to send out for some medical records from a private provider. That's going to delay your claim. There's all kinds of reasons it could be delayed. The CMP examiner might have forgotten something, and the VA had to go back and ask them to clarify something. I mean, there's just all types of issues that could occur. In that situation. I have more paperwork, but VSO not open. So how to get them during Corona if I don't have scanner or fax? You could mail them to the VA, but I would strongly encourage you to go to a UPS store, to go to the find a friend with the fax, or use efax.com and fax them into the VA. Any way you can. I mean, if you could take pictures of them and send them in that way, just get the evidence to the VA any way you can. At this point, I know a lot of stuff is closed because of Corona. So the VA is being in some cases, more liberal with its rules, but the date of the evidence makes a difference. So if you're waiting to submit a claim or something like that, go ahead and get it in any way you can. If you have to mail it, mail it. But if you can fax it by any means necessary, please do that. Thank you guys for your kind comments. What does VA mean when they say we have no information on my supplemental? Sorry if this was asked before, I just logged in. I don't know. Is it va.gov saying that they have no information, or have you been sent a letter that says that they have no information? Where did you get that statement from? I need to know in order to answer your question. I'm just not sure what you mean by that. No information. If you submitted information, they should have it. It was va.gov that said that. It probably just means your claim is still under review at the beginning stages, and they don't have any information to reflect on the public facing site right now. Once it gets to a different stage, it probably will reflect the stage that it's in. But right now, your claim doesn't have any they don't have much information to tell you about it. So that's why it reflects that. Until somebody touches your claim, looks at it, and either moves it on to the next process or decides that you don't have enough evidence to get an exam or something like that and sends you a letter, it's just in a no information status. It's basically in nowhere land right now. How do I go about getting an increase for migraine headaches? They have been getting worse since I was reevaluated in 2012, but I never had an MRI until December 2018, and I have tried several medications to lessen them, and nothing has really helped. Simply put, in an increase for migraine headaches. If your migraines have worsened since 2012 and you haven't filed a a claim since then, then you need to file a new claim for increase for your migraine headaches. That takes going on eBenefits or va.gov and putting in a quick claim, going to a VSO and putting in a claim, or you can fill out the paper application for increase for migraine headaches. So you have a few options there, but definitely if they have gotten worse, if they have gotten more frequent, you have MRI evidence, and you take medication for them, you should put in a claim for increase. Once you are in a decision phase of your appeal, please explain what happens in the process. I would like to know what kind of appeal you put in. If you're talking about at the Board of Veterans Appeals, then what happens is a staff attorney, it will be sent to a staff attorney who will flesh out the law, make a decision, or recommend a decision to a veterans law judge who makes the ultimate decision. And so they have a lot of staff attorneys, staff advisors that first review your claim and look at the legal landscape of it and come to a conclusion and presents that to the veterans law judge over them, and then they make a decision. Then it's either sent back for editing or sent back to send out to you. But the Board of Veterans Appeals has their own structure that they make a decision by. And if you're talking about higher level review, then it just goes to a decision review officer, somebody higher than just a plain rater who's supposed to have more experience. And they review it, give you a call if you ask for an informal conference, and then they make a decision based off the record. If you're talking about a supplemental claim, which is a form of appeal under the new AMA process, Appeals Modernization Act, then the VA just needs to make a decision. And probably means they have enough evidence or you've already had exams. So it depends on what type of appeal you've submitted based to informs what they do next. My PTSD is social impaired 50 to 70%. Also comes in my relationships on the job, but fake through. That said, my job history is consistently working. Right now, I'm at 30% waiting for increase. What are your thoughts if my work has been consistent? How does that work? If you think you should be at a higher level, if you're going to regular counseling or therapy, your therapist thinks you should be at a higher level, you're taking medications, you're having trouble at work, having trouble at home with relationships, having trouble with anxiety, depression, hypervigilance, personal hygiene, that type of thing, then I definitely encourage you. You sounds like you've already put in a claim for increase, and accurately describe to the examiner your symptoms. You have to be vulnerable sometimes and let your guard down. And on that day of your exam, tell the examiner what you're going through, that you still work, but you have problems with relationships on your job, a lot of problems with that, and just be honest about it. And you'll likely get an increase from 30%. It's kind of low. So if you're socially impaired to the point that you can't keep relationships on your job or relationships outside of your job, then you should likely be a little higher. So make sure that you're accurately describing to the examiner your conditions and symptoms. What are your thoughts on applying for total and permanent? If you are 100% scheduler and you want to apply for total and permanent, then you need to send a statement to the VA that says, I want to be total and permanent, and the only condition that I want to be looked at is the one that has a future examination date scheduled. You can find out what condition that is by looking at your decision rating code sheet, rating decision code sheet. It will tell you which conditions are static. Static means not intended to improve, not expected to improve, and non-static conditions will have a future exam date under it. And so your rating code sheet will give you the information you need to ask for your condition, whichever condition isn't static, to be total and permanent. And that's what you need to request from the VA. Yes, that comes with the new exam. They consider it a claim for increase. So you're going to get another exam on whatever condition isn't static. And hopefully it will become static. Do note there is some potential for reduction there. So if there is a decision to make, it's totally up to you. I just received 10% for pain associated with my right thumb injury, 0% for the right thumb injury. I get injections every visit. I have since been utilizing Provent therapy system. I have been diagnosed with diverticulum tenosynovitis and CRPS, right hand. I have new evidence to send, but I don't have a fax scanner to upload so I can put in for increase. What should I do now? You need to find a friend with the fax or a scanner. Go to a UPS store, a FedEx, Kinko's, one of those postal stores. Like here they're called Mail to Go or something like that. Somebody that has a fax machine, go to your library, go to your somewhere with the fax machine and fax that information into the VA and get the confirmation from the fax machine that it was sent. But there's likely somewhere in your town or in a surrounding town that has a place where you can fax and scan your evidence in. If you can't get to a fax or scanner, you've exhausted all evidence and you can't get to a scanner and a fax, mail your evidence into the VA as soon as possible. So the VA does have the option of mailing evidence. I would send it certified to make sure that it got there, but otherwise, if you can't fax, scan it and fax it, then mail it. I received a partial rating. They're waiting to evaluate some other claims, but I noticed a few other claims that gave me a 0%. Is that normal? It's completely normal. There's nothing abnormal about a 0% rating. If you feel it could be higher, you can either appeal or put in a new claim, but there's nothing abnormal about a 0% rating. I would encourage you to look at the rating schedule for each of your conditions and see what the other levels are. If you think you meet other levels, you should probably appeal or put in a new claim. But for all intents and purposes, 0% is just 0%. Probably means you had no pain or were showing no symptoms at the time of exam, but that it is related to a condition you had in service. Is the BVA and rater still working? And if so, how much slower are claims being processed? Yes, the BVA is still working. I've heard like 90% of them are working remotely right now. Raters are still working. Some of them are working remotely too. I've actually had a lot of claims come through this week, and today's only Wednesday. I had quite a few come through last week, and so I don't think the claims process has been slowed down any. That's my personal insight. Besides CMP exams getting canceled and that type of thing, that raters are still working, BVA is still working, pushing out decisions. They're just working remotely, and the VA has the ability to work remotely, to work from home. And so it's been set up for a long time, so there are no issues there. I'm currently 60% and just turned 55, but not, I'm assuming not permanent and total. You have to be 100% to get permanent and total. Unless you get 100% unemployability, you need to be 100% to get permanent and total. Do you have to call for your rating code sheet? How does it work? You can call and ask for a copy of it to be sent out. The fastest way to get it is probably to go to your VSO and ask them to print it out, or your agent or attorney or somebody to print it out for you that has electronic access to the VBMS system. But you can call the VA and ask for it. If you had a representative at the time that you filed the claim, then the representative should have gotten a copy of your code sheet. They don't send it to veterans, but they do send it to representatives. I get a stack of mail each day from the VA, and all of the decisions have the rating code sheet in them. They don't send it to the veteran, but they do send it to me. And so if you had a representative at the time that you filed your claim, then go to that person and ask to see the rating code sheet. I'm currently 50% for my knees. I have been diagnosed with moderate anxiety and depression, which I take medications for. I also have obstructive sleep apnea with the CPAP and chronic back pain. I have not submitted any claims yet, but my employer has placed me on long-term disability, saying that I have too many chronic issues and that I would not be able to return to work. What advice do you have for me to help get to 100%? Do you think I have a good chance to get in total and permanent? If you have 50% just for your knees, that means your knees are in pretty bad condition, because usually the usual claim for knees only gets 10% each knee. So if you have 50% for your knees are really, really bad. And I would encourage you to apply for any secondary conditions if your bad knees have caused any other conditions, for example, your hips to hurt, or your ankles to hurt, or your feet to hurt because you can't stand for that long, your back to hurt, you need to put those things, file a claim for those things secondary to your knees. If because of your knees you have anxiety or depression because of the chronic pain, you need to file a claim for that. I don't necessarily know how sleep apnea would be connected to your knees, but it might be connected to the anxiety and depression. And once you get that rated, you can put in for sleep apnea secondary. But if you file enough secondary conditions, then you might have a good chance to get into total and permanent. Once you get to 60 or 70%, you can file for unemployability with the VA, and that they will pay you at the 100% rate. So you need to consider all your options, but I would definitely encourage you, if your knees are that bad that they're rated 50%, I would encourage you to look for secondary conditions that might be related to your knees. I filed a claim and was denied on everything I filed, which was in my military records. I put in an appeal and I'm waiting on my appointment before the judge. What evidence should I have ready for my appeal? You should be ready to testify, to bring anybody else to testify, any new evidence that you have that you want to submit to present it to the judge. You want to make the most compelling case before the judge that you can. I encourage you to get a representative of VSO that will go with you, a claims agent, an attorney, somebody who knows how to ask questions before a judge and solicit the answers that you need to be ready for your appeal. I definitely encourage you to get assistance. I'm not encouraging paid assistance. You can get free assistance, but get assistance if you have a hearing before a judge at the Board of Veterans Appeals. You definitely want to make sure that you get that right. So that's my take on that. I'm currently rated 60% and just turned 55 years old. Will I get reevaluated if I do not file additional claims? You should not get reevaluated. If you're 55 years old, you should not get reevaluated. My claim for tinnitus got denied, saying not service connected, but I believe it should be. What should I do? You should appeal. Use one of the avenues available to you. Write a good personal statement up and send it in. But you should definitely appeal if your tinnitus got denied and you feel it should get service connected. I should preference that with you need to get the exam results from your tinnitus exam and see why the doctor said it's not service connected, because that's the hurdle you have to overcome. If you can get an outside audiologist to write something that says it's more likely than not service connected, that will go a long way, but you need to get the exam results and see exactly why they say it's not service connected. Do you believe the decisions are going to be more favorable since raters are working at home? I think it's a pretty neutral thing that they're working from home. They might be more comfortable and inclined to grant stuff, but generally it's just that's a neutral element. They're going to make the same decision as if they were sitting at their desk at the regional office writing your claim. I'm referring to an appeal that was sent by the VBA to the RO. Therefore, my question is the time frame for the RO to rate a remanded claim. Oh, remanded claims take a long time. I looked at the average a couple weeks ago and it was like 500 days. And so I would be prepared to wait, stand by. It's going to take some time. It's just going to take some time for a remanded claim. Is there something that my employer can write to my social worker or VSO to state that my disability is affecting my job so much that I'm missing a lot of days that could cost me employment? Yes, they can write a statement saying just that and submit it with your disability claim. If you have enough percent, 60 or 70% to apply for unemployability, then I would definitely encourage you to get that letter from your employer. Do you have to file for a secondary condition specifically? Yes. You have to specifically state or point out to the VA that you're applying for the condition secondary to whatever the primary condition is. That way they will process it that way. I'm rated 90%. My physician stated that my diagnosis won't get better. How do I get permanent and total? You can either apply for unemployability or you can apply for whatever increase, if there is room for increase, that the condition that your physician stated won't get better. You need to look at the rating schedule and see if there's any room for increase of that condition, or that you meet the standard for the next highest rating, and decide if it's worth putting in a claim. Are there any secondary conditions that you can file to your current conditions where you're rated 90% at? Are there any other ways that you can get the things that you're currently rated for increased? I mean, there's a lot of avenues that you need to look at, and if you don't know how to look at it yourself, get a representative to help you. Chances of higher level review being approved. I like higher level reviews. I think the chance to talk to the rater or talk to the person making the decision is a good thing for veterans. Your chances, I think, are 50-50. I mean, it just depends on the evidence that is of record. and how you present that. And so it depends on the facts of your case, but I think higher level review is a good way to go for appeals if your claim warrants that. I submitted a supplemental claim for migraine secondary to PTSD and provided a nexus. And I'm assuming you were going to say it was denied. I would certainly ask for a higher level review in that case. I would get the exam results or whatever the VA did and see what the doctor said about it. But the rest of that question is missing. But I'm assuming that it was denied even after you provided a nexus. And so I would fight that decision because when evidence is equal, it should benefit the veteran. And so that's where we are with that. But it looks like I have no more questions. So thank you guys. I hope that you're taking care of yourself during this virus situation. And I pray the best for your claims. Take care.